Hey, what's up? Hello, I hope you all are doing well. Today's video is a review of The Girl Who Kept the Castle by Ryan Graudin, which is scheduled to be published on June 18th of this year. An advance copy of this book was very kindly sent to me through NetGalley from the author Ryan Graudin, who you may know from several other popular books out in the teen and YA and middle grade space. And this book is being billed as Nevermore meets Howl's Moving Castle, so it definitely fit in with the type of books that I like to read, given how I do love Nevermore, that entire series. And I've never seen Howl's Moving Castle, but I have seen Spirited Away, which is in the same vein, so I figured that this would be absolutely perfect. And I was really excited to give it a go, and I'm excited to share with you some thoughts about it in advance of its publication. This book begins with a death, and that's not a spoiler, that is right out of the gate. There is a man, his name is Wizard West. He is one of 4 wizards, one for each of the cardinal directions, and Wizard West is dead. He doesn't realize that he's dead, and the folks who are in his castle who work with and or for him are a little nervous to tell him, because he's the kind of person that would not take that news very lightly. So it takes him a few days and one very spunky girl's brave explanation to him to let him know that he is dead. And as a result of that, in this magical realm of what I believe is called Solemn, as we know, I am not an expert fantasy name pronouncer, so hopefully I'm doing that right. But Wizard West, like I mentioned, is one of 4 wizards in Solemn, and with him gone, there is something called the balance, and it's the balance between this force that's between all 4 quadrants and then the central location of the monarchy in this area that all has to sit in balance, and there is a powerful magic that holds everything in the balance, capital B balance. And with one wizard gone, that creates a big old problem for the entire realm at large. Enter our main character, a young girl named Faye Gardner, who is, as you might expect, the daughter of the gardener at Wizard West's castle, and she has been tasked through the other members of the household to tell Wizard West that he is dead. And upon receiving that news, everyone kind of jumps into action, because there's a realization that unless Wizard West finds a replacement, the balance with all of these 4 areas of the realm will be thrown off. Everything will be thrown into chaos. Life as they know it will cease to exist. So he really needs to pick a successor and an apprentice ASAP. The rest of the book takes place with Wizard West designing a way to establish his successor. You get to go through that process with him, and eventually we do wind up finding out who the successor, if any, will be. And in the rush to find someone to help keep the balance of this world, we encounter a number of exciting characters along the way. Wizard West, I think, was my favorite character of everyone in this book, only because I do have a penchant for self-important, pompous old people who think that they are somehow a step above everyone else, and throughout the course of a lot of books we get to see them taken down a peg. I just enjoy the humor that often comes from that pomposity, and I was absolutely not denied any of that with Wizard West. I felt he was the most fully developed character of everyone in this novel, and I also really appreciated his knack and penchant himself for turning people that he is upset with into animals. It gave some kind of Beauty and the Beast vibes, where in Beauty and the Beast all of the folks in the castle from magic have been turned into pieces of furniture or other fixtures in the house, and in this case, when Wizard West gets upset, he just turns people into cats. Which leads me to the next character. There's a cat in this book, and he gave me some very like Salem from Sabrina the Teenage Witch type of vibes. He obviously knows a lot and is essentially in charge of the place, even though Wizard West feels that he's in charge of his castle and his quadrant in Solemn. But in reality, it's this cat who knows what's up most of the time. My biggest frustration with him as a character was that there was a deep sense of urgency in regaining the balance in this book, and this cat kept going off to deal with the problems with this almost inflated air of mystery about him. And there were moments where I was like, dude, come on. You gotta at least tell somebody where you're going. If you're that important and holding this down, you gotta tell someone what's up. You can't just disappear for days at a time, especially when we're going through a process of picking a new wizard's apprentice, and hundreds of people are descending upon the castle for this magnificent party / trial process. Dude, come on back. But for our character Hamartia, I think that's one that definitely endeared this cat character to me. And lastly, I want to talk about Faye, who is, like I mentioned, our main character. She's this young girl. Her father is the groundskeeper. For most of this book, her father is actually absent. He's off on some kind of quest to go harvest some sort of magical herb or plant. And I really appreciated that about this book, actually, how it wasn't just that there was magic in people, like people didn't just have power that was part of them. There was a real emphasis that there was magic to be gained from the making of things like potions and spells and concoctions and stuff, and how we need to work together as a community. It is the magic that people make by working together that is what is powerful, as opposed to just something that one person holds. All of this to say, Faye has a very keen sense of justice. She is very humorous. More often than not, her internal monologue is the main source of humor in any scene that she's present for, and I appreciated that she wasn't necessarily always right all the time, and she definitely doubted herself, and you got to see her struggle and work through that, which for a middle grade audience, that is 100% I think what kids reading this book need to see, is that productive struggle of figuring out, even at an early age, like what your values are and how you want to express them. But it also didn't hurt that she had a bunch of zingers in all of her internal monologue, like I mentioned, and the way that she interacts with the other people around her, whether they be children or adults. Interestingly, Faye is another person in this book who is somebody that has magical abilities, but I think they're keeping it very much on the down low. The attitude toward magic in this book actually really reminded me of a different book. Let's find it. Of T. Kingfisher's A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, and that is because the attitude in this community toward magic is very, very similar. People with magic are generally asked to like tone it down and stay away from that, because there are only certain people who are allowed to use magic, and if you're not one of them, you're not one of them, so you better button it up. So right away I felt there was an access point for understanding Faye's magic that I had as a reader, having already read this other book, which is quite popular. And just as an aside, there were also magical baked goods in this particular story as well, which was a really nice addition. I always love when people are able to create magical food somehow. In terms of the setting, this world, like I mentioned, is arranged into 4 quadrants: northeast, south, and west. And then in the center, in the circle, there is essentially the seat of the monarchy, and there's a king and his family who live in that castle and sort of, in a very figurehead and policy-making way, rule over the entire place. And then there are wizards who are keeping the 4 quadrants in the capital B balance, to make sure nothing terrible happens and evil people do not come back into power as they have in the past. As a reader who, when encountering fantasy, very frequently does not appreciate like huge sprawling lands where there's all kinds of different stuff happening in different areas, and you have to memorize like, oh, this is like the mountain wintry range, and oh, this is this one, and this is this area, and this is that area. No, there are 4 quadrants. There's a circle in the middle. It's very easy to understand. It's very straightforward. It did not take me forever to try and figure out the geography of this world. As much as I love a map in a book, I didn't feel like I needed a map to understand this, which was great. The political structure, likewise, was easy to follow. There is a king, and he does the policy making and all of the, the head of state stuff, and then there are wizards who are handling the magic aspect of it. So as a system of governance, that made sense to me. However, within this structure, there are undoubtedly some things that the citizens of this area feel need to be changed. This book has clear notes of feminism that are absolutely unmissable. It brings forward antiquated laws and commonplace systems and understandings and rationales that people have accepted for forever, which are really not beneficial to women and in fact exclusionary of women. And it is very, very obvious in this book who is for those systems and who is against those systems. And there is some obvious, like, let's work to change people's minds about this way of thinking being made done. As an adult, I think if this were an adult book, I would have felt that it was very heavy-handed, but for 4th graders or for 5th graders who are the target audience for this material, it is absolutely perfect. And as someone who works with 4th and 5th graders on a pretty regular basis, I can say that this book does a nice job of drawing out the question of, oh, we're treating this group of people differently based on this particular thing. Do we think that's fair? If yes, why? If no, why? Which I think at that age, kids are really starting to be able to grapple with that question. And the way that it's done in this book with characters who are really committed to missions and goals and to each other and a sense of family is a beautiful through line. And it's a great way to introduce that topic without being really sharp or really vague and asking kids to draw a lot of connections for themselves. Throughout all that, this book also just has that like magical, adventurous tone that really holds your attention that I just find a lot of adult books don't have. Yes, in books that are written for adults, sometimes there can be a sense of adventure, or there can be magic, or it can be fantasy, whatever it is, that holds your attention and is really gripping and keeps you captivated. But that vibe, and I think anyone who reads a lot of middle grade or fiction for young readers will know this, will have felt it. That vibe and that feeling are just extraordinarily different. Yes, because the writing style needs to be different. Yes, because the language that's used needs to be different for children, obviously. But there's something about it that hooks you in a different way, and often it's why I prefer middle grade literature to adult-oriented high fantasy. I think there's something calming about it where you get that sense of urgency, you get that sense of like darkness and fear and foreboding with whatever the problem is, and you also get like the safety and comfort of this magical world. I find there to be more ease of escapism, I guess, in that sense of adventure in works that are for younger readers than I do in works for adults, and this book absolutely has that. It holds your attention, it has that feeling, it has that sparkly quality with that sort of dark dustiness underneath that plays just like in Nevermore, and I really appreciated how that wasn't lost in this book. The arc of the story here has a very satisfying conclusion, start to finish. You know, it does take a little bit from other fantasy genre books where here's a problem, here's how we're going to solve it. A bunch of kids are going to move forward in these different prearranged tasks that have been set by adults. The adults are going to judge whether or not they're good enough, and at the end of it, you know, something is going to happen to one or several of them as a result of how good they are at the tasks, right? We've seen that in many, many times. So it follows that same narrative arc with the same satisfying conclusion as you would get in a lot of other fantasy books. And I think that this is a really strong contender out in the middle grade space to be something that students love, that kids love, and would pick up out of the library just on a whim. It also helps that the castle in this book is a character unto itself and needs to be nurtured and cared for and saved and interacts with people much in the same way that the Hotel Deucalion in Nevermore does, or the staircases in Hogwarts in Harry Potter might. With all that said, if Nevermore and Howl's Moving Castle are your thing, this is definitely a meeting in the middle. It is wonderful, it is cute, it is really charming, and I think that you should pick it up. Again, this book comes out on June 18th, 2024. Thank you again to both the author and to NetGalley for the advance copy of this book that I got to read. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Anything that you might want to know about us is indeed in the description, and we'll see you very soon.